of Juneteenth, the holiday that celebrates the emancipation of those enslaved in the United States, we have assembled an amazing panel for this evening. They will discuss ways to enhance the economic vitality of Black communities on multiple fronts, including job creation, financial literacy, wealth building, financial inclusion, and economic integration. I also hope you were able to watch the film, America's Black Upper Class, Rich, Successful, and Empowered, that was provided in your registration link. This social justice series is part of our Standing in Solidarity initiative. The purpose of this series is to bring our community together and to encourage everyone to take part in the movement to ensure civil rights for all. On our website, you can find archived prior social justice panel discussions, as well as resources that will help you take action. We are also happy to have our advisors, Newark NAACP and NJ Institute for Social Justice, Newark Arts and the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center at Rutgers University, Newark, Director Africana Institute at Essex County College and ACLU, New Jersey. Now, NJPAC would like to offer land acknowledgement. The language we are using was created with consultation and guidance from Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo Lenape Munsee tribe and Oleana Whispering Dove of the Eastern Tuskegee Algonquin descendant. We are grateful to them for their generosity, wisdom, and labor to craft these words. We, the Lenape, original benefactors of land, once ripened and cultivated with attentiveness to the Creator and her descendancy, express everlasting gratitude to our Creator for the traditional ancestral jurisdictions of the Munsee, Esopus, Canarsie, Capsee, Huerpos, Swanoy, and Wequesquic, jointly known together as the Ramapo and Natticoke Lenni Lenape. We are the Lenape Hoking today and will be for the remaining days of tomorrow, keepers of the past. Let this moment of recognition be a monument of action. Let it be the beginning of hope for this Turtle Island and for the Ramapo Lenape, the Munsee people of whose land we now trod. Here on this land, in this place of the Munsee, we acknowledge our debt to those who have come before us, to those who have been denigrated and suffered for the sake of cultural and land appropriation. Let this, our land acknowledgement, be the beginning of our return to unity. Let us be guardians of the water, the air, and the earth, the four-legged, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the mammal people, and the green. Let us now stand lifting our humanity, enrapturing with Earth's consciousness as guardians of harmony and kindness. This acknowledgement demonstrates our ongoing commitment as a community working to dismantle the continued legacies of colonialism, oppression, and systematic racism. We offer a pledge of social justice awakening and education in order to raise the level of awareness and to ultimately strengthen the communal fabric, which includes outreach with our Indigenous neighbors. In this way, our collective voices can disrupt patterns of social injustice through reverence of the Native people who share their land and by revitalizing Indigenous history through Indigenous-specific programming. We are deeply appreciative of the ongoing financial support from our sponsors, PSEG. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Khalid Wright, a Senior Customer Operations Supervisor for the Contact Center located out of the General Office. During his tenure at PSEG, Khalid has had the opportunity to work on various projects centered on improving the customer service, as well as massed employees' daily responsibilities. These projects include reducing escalated callbacks and repeat calls, time management, skills, reverse mentoring, and utility culture frontline supervisors initiative. A native of New Jersey, Khalid spent his childhood and a portion of his adult life in the city of East Orange and has been active in civic engagement, servicing his community. Mr. Wright, are you here?
Yes. Good evening, Latoya. And good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. As mentioned, I am Khalid Wright, Senior Customer Operations Supervisor at PSEG. We are the very proud sponsors of the True Diversity Film Series with PSEG. PSEG, which has been headquartered in Newark for more than a century, is thrilled to be a longtime supporter of NJPAC. We've been a part of the community that has backed this anchor culture institution ever since it first opened almost 25 years ago. And the True Diversity Film Series represents that best of that relationship. In fact, we have continued our support, and in 2021, the PSEG Foundation announced a 2-year pledge to NJPAC for the Standing in Solidarity program, which includes the True Diversity Film Series. This film series is a reflection of PSEG's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially here in Newark, where we are more than just another utility and more than just another company. We are proud of our commitment as citizens of Newark and as citizens of New Jersey. A tremendous part of that commitment is our support for organizations such as NJPAC and what that support means for diversity, for education, and for the arts. During this time, so many renewed conversations around race and justice, PSEG has committed millions of dollars and launched multiple initiatives aimed at ensuring that everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, is treated equally and equitably in our company, in our community, and most importantly, in our country. In order to continue to emphasize the importance of providing support in such areas of critical community need, the PSEG Foundation has realigned its giving strategy under 3 new pillars: environmental sustainability, social justice, and equity and economic empowerment. I just want to repeat that 3rd pillar: equity and economic empowerment, which I believe is probably one of the strongest of all 3. Here at PSEG, we know that when one of us is impacted in the community, we all feel the impact. That's why it's essential that we all join together to act and build a framework of equity, passion, and respect throughout the many diverse communities we represent that will truly benefit us all. On behalf of PSEG, we believe that our long-standing support for diversity, education, and the arts helps us contribute to that ideal as well. Now, it is my honor to welcome all of you to this important and timely event on developing Black wealth. Thank you for being here this evening, and please enjoy what I believe will be a magnificent, powerful, and educational discussion this evening. Thank you again, and now I return it back over to Latoya.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. It is with great pleasure I would like to introduce and welcome our moderator for the evening, William S. Parrish, Jr., President and CEO of NobleStrategy and adjunct professor at NYU's Schack Institute of Real Estate and Baruch College's Zicklin School of Business. NobleStrategy provides project management services to commercial and residential public and private clients. For the past 15 years, William has also served as an adjunct professor at NYU's Schack Institute of Real Estate and Baruch College Zicklin School of Business, teaching courses such as operating and managing a construction organization, construction safety management, project management, and construction and managing construction in a global pandemic. Woo. His new motivational book, Making Bold Moves, Creating Multi-Million-Dollar Success in 500 Days or Less, details his remarkable success and is geared toward aspiring entrepreneurs, business owners, and industry executives. Please welcome to our panel this evening, moderator William S. Parrish, Jr.
Thank you, Latoya. How are you? Thank you so much. So glad to be here today. I want to say thank you to NJPAC and also thank you to our sponsors at PSEG. We have a fantastic program for you this evening, Developing Black Wealth. And I really do hope everyone had a chance to see the film, America's Black Upper Class. It's really, really phenomenal. We're going to dig into that. But first, we have some fantastic folks with you to share today, and I want to introduce them as well. First, I want to ask Sabrina Lamb to join us. Sabrina Lamb from the World of Money. And I'm going to ask Sabrina Lamb to say hello and introduce herself in 30 seconds.
Hello, good evening. It's an honor to be here. As introduced, I am Sabrina Lamb, the founder and the executive director of the World of Money, the leading provider of immersive financial education for children ages 7 to 18, as well as the founder of Wakeza, the leading provider of investor education and access to U.S. publicly traded companies. Good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Thanks for being with us today. Next, I want to introduce from the Institute for Social Justice here, located in Newark, New Jersey, Dr. Jean-Pierre Brutus. Dr. Brutus.
Thank you, William. Hello, everyone. My name is Jean-Pierre Brutus. I'm a senior counsel in the economic justice pillar at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice in Newark, New Jersey. The Institute's cutting-edge racial and social justice advocacy seeks to empower people of color by building reparative systems that create wealth, transform justice, and harness democratic power from the ground up here in New Jersey. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Brutus. So we may have the pleasure of having a surprise guest, Ms. Monica Soyemi, join us to give us her perspective on real estate. But we're just going to keep that as a surprise for now, even though I shared it with you already. So when you do see her, be prepared to greet her as well. So I'd like to get right into it if I can. And I want to ask both of you some questions and get your take on the film as well as some key points. In Developing Black Wealth, we really talk in terms of three major platforms. I like to talk in three major platforms: entrepreneurship, which is a direct path to wealth, but it's not for everyone. Financial literacy, being able to understand the velocity of your money and how to use it as a tool. And then lastly, generational wealth accumulation. What are we doing to plan generationally? In the film, we saw upper Black rich folk, right? But they did not talk about generations. Ms. Lamb, can you share with us kind of what you see about that in terms of the barriers to not only creating the wealth, but sustaining the wealth? Ms. Lamb.
Well, first, I think that in terms of barriers, I always like to approach environments with opportunity and legacy and history. In the film, while it was wonderful to see, rich people of African descent, I did not see how they were preparing generations, the next generation beyond themselves. And there's a huge difference between being rich and being wealthy. And I like the wealthy part because that is preparing and seeing your presence, your alignment with this powerful currency called money beyond just your lifetime. And I think that we need to know, and there are thousands of examples in the African American and the African descended diaspora that are perfectly aligned with money. Everyone from Mansa Musa to Jeremiah Hamilton, the richest man in America, richest Black man in America in the 1800s, from Osceola McCarthy, who in the 1970s donated the largest gift to the University of Mississippi, and her occupation during her entire life was washing clothes for others, but she knew how to save, and she only had a 3rd grade education. So I like those examples, because if we're serious about sustainability, you gotta have some money. You have to have some money. And we talk about culture often, but if we see ourselves in the pool of money and how the opportunities and the access that it can provide, whether we have whatever income that we have, the world can open up, but we're also demonstrating what our long legacy of ancestors have already done.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great point. And we really want to examine those lines. But in addition to that, we can talk in terms of what we do and what we're faced with. In terms of what we do, you laid it out clearly, and what we need to do. But in terms of what we're faced with, I want to ask Dr. Brutus to talk a little bit about some of those systemic barriers that have been there that have really shielded us away from arriving where we need to be, where we know we need to be.
Sure. Thank you. So first, I want to start with a number. That number is 300,000. And I'll say it again for everyone listening. 300,000. That is the racial wealth gap here in New Jersey. The median net wealth of white households in New Jersey is $320,500. And the median net wealth of Black families in New Jersey is $26,000. It's a gap of over $300,000. Now, that didn't come out of nowhere. That wasn't a result of Black culture or some kind of failing in the individuals of Black individuals. That has a particular history, a particular historical context in policies and structures. And that begins with slavery in New Jersey. So in New Jersey, a northern state was once known as the slave state of the North. And particularly for our purposes around wealth and building wealth, New Jersey incentivized providing land for white settling families by giving them 150 acres of land for white settling families in the 17th century, in the 1600s. And then for enslaved people for each enslaved person that they owned, they gave them an additional 150 acres of land, all right? Also, under the slave codes, enslaved people were barred from owning land. So right there, you have the dichotomy, the division, the creation of this racial wealth gap right there. Then, moving forward, after enslavement, you had the creation of sharecropping and cottaging, right? Black people were still were not able to own land and had to work the land to even try to attempt to purchase the land, but the system was designed in a particular kind of way to prevent that. Fast forward to the early 20th century with redlining. Sometimes when people hear redlining, they don't really understand the kind of graphic nature of what redlining is, which is federally backed lending institutions drawing literally red lines around predominantly Black neighborhoods, saying that those neighborhoods were dangerous and they could not invest or provide loans and mortgages for people to buy homes in those neighborhoods, right? De-investing in Black neighborhoods, right? And then you had racially restrictive covenants where you had private agreements, but also community level agreements in which people would not sell their homes to Black families, right? This was outlawed in 1948 in a court case, but also with the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Moving forward, right? Universal programs. I overlooked something. I just want to go back. At a time when, after enslavement, when Black people were asking for reparations, they were denied that, and reparations were paid to masters, but also millions of acres of land through the Homestead Act of 1862 were given to white families at a very cheap and low price. Essentially, the white middle class was subsidized at that moment. Fast forward to the 1940s, right? Black soldiers went abroad to fight for the double V, for the victory against fascism in Europe, and to come back here in the United States and fight against Jim Crow. They came back thinking that they would benefit from the GI Bill. The GI Bill, just like the Marshall Plan, was designed to subsidize and rebuild the middle class in the United States and in Europe. Yet, of the 67,000 people in northern New Jersey and in New York who were eligible for the GI Bill, less than 100 of those Black people received it, okay? They were denied. It was a federal program that was administered by the states specifically to block Black people from participating in what created essentially the white middle class in the mid 20th century. And so I wanted us to point that out. And then you fast forward to 2008, the housing crisis, the housing bubble, right? Black families were given subprime loans, right? Even Black people doing very well who have incomes of over $200,000 are more likely to receive subprime loans than white families making less than $30,000.
Okay.
And so you have contemporary forms of inequality, and then you have past inequality. And so you have the creation, so you have a history, a long history, centuries of taking Black wealth. You have the destruction of Tulsa, right? You have massive, you have these essentially are in some ways programs, are racial pogroms in which Black wealth is destroyed, either through structures or policies or through violent acts. And then you have contemporary forms of inequality that create this massive racial wealth gap, both in New Jersey and in the United States. And it creates what we call at the Institute, the two New Jerseys. New Jersey is a very prosperous state, but it has some of the worst racial inequality in the nation. And you have this massive racial wealth gap. And what we want to do is really close that racial wealth gap. We want to create the structural conditions. And so I want to leave your audience with this. Just as the racial wealth gap was created by structures and policy, slavery and Jim Crow and the discrimination through the GI Bill or through the other policies, even the New Deal, those things can be closed and addressed through policies and structures as well. And we want to create the conditions for that.
So you bring very interesting points, and I know your organization has done considerable research on these issues. Let's talk about the wealth gap for just a second as it relates to higher education and student debt. Because, and Sabrina, I'm going to ask you to speak to this because it's the mentality sometimes that is holding us back. I'm a proud graduate of Hampton University and founder of HBCU Greatness, and part of the genesis for that organization was to celebrate students who are making the decision to go to these schools today, because unfortunately it's not a popular decision. So many parents, when you ask them where their kid is going to school, they say whoever gives us the most money. And kids also have been taught that student debt is not good. And I like to think of some debt as being good debt and investment. But it's the mentality. If our mentality doesn't change, it's going to be hard for us to change this thing. So our organization seeks to defeat the achievement/wealth gap because they're tied together. So Sabrina, can you talk to us about the mentality it takes to reverse this cycle of looking at this as an expense as opposed to an investment, and how we tackle those things? Because the student debt issue is real, without a doubt. But I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I do believe that we need to be more insightful in how we recommend higher education for young people. And what I mean by that is just because a building has the word college, university on it does not mean that there's real education happening. When students will say, I am going to major in a certain discipline, because I don't want to get letters from that discipline, I say, well, how are you going to leverage that degree to sustain yourself financially so that after graduation, you're not returning to your mother or your father's home? And many of them do not have any answer. And I'm the history major in the group, but there's not a long line of history majors outside looking. There's no industry looking for history majors, okay? And so we're not educating students on how to think about their higher education, to leverage it to thrive in this global economy. Just because you graduate from a university, and I'm an HBCU graduate as well, you have to have the kind of degree that the global economy is demanding. And sometimes we're just happy that the student graduated. Well, that is great, but then what about the debt that you are amassing? And sometimes, we'll see the advertisement about a certain school on the internet or a commercial when it's really a diploma mill. The only thing they care about is that you do go in debt. So we have to just understand that sometimes there are institutions that are federally rewarded for their funding to have your butt in the seat. Okay, not that you get educated, but they have your butt in the seat. And that's why read the fine print is really, really important. And making sure that whatever university that you attend, that degree that you're going to earn, that you're going to be able to leverage it for your own financial security and wealth. Otherwise, you're just learning. And then what?
So we know the economy is changing also, and 4-year degrees are not prioritized. Sometimes it's a certificate in coding, sometimes it's certification or special training. But just having students think differently about this money would make a difference. And this whole conversation around student debt forgiveness at the federal level, the caveat is it's supposed to assist in narrowing the achievement gap. I want to hit Dr. Brutus. You know, I don't know if the studies show that, right? But when you carry considerable debt, it is very, very difficult to get started. But if we are able to wipe this debt away and all of this student loan forgiveness that we're talking about, will it really lead to narrowing the wealth gap and achieving success in your mind?
Thank you. I want to make this clear to your audience. Student debt, the student debt issue is a racial justice issue, okay? And I like the language of canceling student debt, because we shouldn't see education as being a privilege or as being, especially higher education, particularly in this economic moment. It is something about improving, it not only improves, it increases the odds of higher income and greater life chances for individuals, but it also helps society. And we should see higher education as an investment for society as a whole. And so taking out loans for education should be seen as bettering society as well. And at the Institute, we support canceling student debt because we see education as incredibly important for closing the racial wealth gap. But Black students are much more likely than their white peers to take out loans because of the racial wealth gap. They're more likely after 20 years of graduating from school to continue to have debt in relation to their white peers who have their parents or others help them out, right? And that also delays important milestones to building wealth, like owning a home, right? Purchasing a car, doing like things. It has, and also places limitations on one's life chances and what can do when one is burdened by significant student debt. So we fully support canceling student debt. I'm a big fan of education. I have myself a PhD. I'm also an attorney. So I really believe in the power of education. But also at the Institute, we also want to shift the thinking about education, and we support tuition-free education here in the state of New Jersey, because we think of education as a public good, right? Particularly higher education. We need to rethink our logic in thinking about higher education as an extension of K through 12 education. At a time when Black students and other students who were previously excluded from higher education in the 1960s, 1970s, the shift of how higher education was paid for shifted from the public, the government, to individuals, right? And you also had this simultaneous massive increase in the average tuition payment. So from 1983, 1984 to now, well, but in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, you had a 497% increase in the cost of tuition, right? Massively outpacing wage growth or anything else, right? And so it creates a massive burden on individuals taking out, and also, and I want to point this out, HBCUs are incredibly important because they train, future Black doctors and engineers and lawyers, and a lot of the Black professional class is trained and taught at HBCU. So it remains an important institution in the United States. But student debt is a racial justice issue. And I think it's a progressive thing because when we look at wealth rather than income, it closes the racial wealth gap. So let's look at that.
I don't think we can, they're inextricably linked to the wealth gap. Sabrina, you had something you want to say, and then we're going to move to the next section.
Yeah, I disagree with, I agree with Mr. Brutus, but I would also love for all these institutions that are providing these, this money, these student loans, there has to be a financial education. I don't believe that a 17-year-old and sometimes with the parents understand the commitment, the responsibility of that debt that sometimes can lead to negative credit, which can lead to not being able to enter certain professions. There has to, before any institution, including HBCU, has a child, a young person and their parents to sign on the dotted line, there has to be education. And it's not just sign away and you want to go to that university and you do, but you don't understand the debt that you are taking on.
We're just getting to the point where we're teaching financial literacy in some high schools. And at Hampton University, they had a class called University 101, where you learn about the history of the institution. You should certainly have financial literacy. But I want to pivot just a second and move on to something, because I'm reading the chat as well. And I see some people talking about how they see college as an investment. And I see it the same, but it brings me to the generational wealth issue. And I want to challenge both of you with a perspective as a parent. I am still paying student loans for undergraduate and graduate school myself, but my two children, I have a graduate from Hampton in 2020 and a senior at Howard right now, they will graduate with no debt. And that's because we feel this obligation in terms of generational wealth to do better for our kids than what was done for us, right? But the challenge is, in some cases, in terms of financial literacy, are we crippling them when we're going to pay for them, or are we teaching them how to take on structure and build create the wealth you need to attain what you want? So almost every parent is going to want to do everything they can, but we don't want to cripple our children by taking away some of this stuff. So I want to challenge both of you on generational wealth as it relates to teaching our generations financial literacy and how we move that forward.
Well, the world of money, we start at age 7. I see Donna Stewart has a question. When do we begin teaching these important issues? We start at age 7. And actually children are they're keenly, they understand the power of money because they've been watching their parents interact with it from the moment they've come on the planet. So they understand that currency will fulfill what they want and their needs, they'll take care of, but all the things that they want. So it's important to start having a holistic conversation with children early, not from just a consumer standpoint, but from a saver, an investor, an entrepreneur, and really important as a philanthropist. According to the Organization of Economic and Community Development, the United States is number 17 in the world when it comes to financial education. 50 or more % of teens say they are not equipped with understanding how to manage their money. And so if you don't have this financial education, I'm talking about immersive, not just a class on budgeting, I'm talking about wealth mindset or unpacking one's mindset to trust and wills, because we talk about generational wealth, but we ignore the estate planning, and we're arguing at the repast.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it. No more GoFundMe. No more GoFundMe.
Right. Because number one, GoFundMe and the Internal Revenue Service is coming after you.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable. It's just not. So, Dr. Brutus, let me challenge you. From the perspective of a parent, in terms of how much we feel we need to do for our students, our children, and what it goes to building generational wealth accumulation.
I don't want to give you any parenting advice, as I am not a parent, but, I think a lot of white families, to be frank, are paying for their students' college, right? Part of the reason why they're able to, they have that generational wealth and they use it to pay either off college or graduate school, and then they make a down payment on their children's, first house, their starter home. And so I think, and those white families are able to, go on and prosper. I don't necessarily think, part of the purpose of generational wealth is to pass it down to your family members, right? And however you see fit. And I think one of the things I want to raise is that the Institute has advocated previously, and we've gotten legislation passed just in the past few months, for schools in New Jersey to disaggregate by race and household income their student loan information, so that students and families as consumers can see information about how graduates are graduating with certain amounts of debt, and also by degree, by major, right? And we're working on implementing that legislation with the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education, right? Because that's incredibly important. As consumers, you need that information to be able to compare. But I think, part of the benefits of having generational wealth is having the autonomy to do what it is that you wish to do with. And it's up to the parent to have that kind of, discussion with your children about, financial literacy. But also, we are also at the Institute promoting, at the high school level, hopefully having a minimum of a certain amount of credits for financial literacy in the state of New Jersey, right? To empower students to be able to have those skills so that when they go out in the world, they can make the decisions themselves as well.
Yeah, so I want to stay on generational wealth for another second and talk about life insurance as a vehicle. One of my, and I take mentors from, every business biography I can read, and I read every one I get a chance, but Arthur G. Gaskin, A.G. Gaskin, Black Titan was one of my favorite books. And he built his business as an entrepreneur, life insurance. He sold co-workers lunch because he saw that when they got paid on Friday, by Monday, they didn't have any more money. So he made loans, he sold them lunch, and eventually he started to insure them and create burial policies and became wildly successful and funded a great portion of the civil rights movement. But in terms of insurance, I'm going back to mentality, Sabrina and Dr. Brutus, on how we think about this. I have relatives who say, I don't need insurance. All you need is enough to bury me. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you're leaving out the next generation. And if someone in your family is 60 or 70 years old and you attempt to take a policy out on them, they're going to feel like, what are you guys trying to do to me? So we get right back to this mentality and how we feel about money and this learning, et cetera. One last point, as life insurance can be a vehicle in that if you start a policy on your children when they're born, by the time they're 18 and they're ready to go to school, you could access cash value to pay for college, right? But some people feel like, oh my God, why are you insuring our children? I don't like the way that feels. So let's talk more about our mentality and where we are, our mind frame about learning and using these tools. Sabrina.
No, I think that's very important. In fact, it starts there. Financial education starts there. You will not save a nickel if you do not believe that your life is worth saving, period. You're just not going to do it because number one, you're not planning for the next thing. You just don't. And so you believe inside of your spirit that you don't feel that anything matters except feeling the emptiness in your soul. And so what we do, the work that we do with children at World of Money is teach children that they're perfect as they are, that they don't need to use one more nickel to fill the emptiness or to justify their standing on the planet with someone else's name on their body. And so it has to stay there and has to stay there for a while because sometimes parents, as they have shared with us for the last 17 years, some of them feel that they have to be what they perceive as the hero or the shero. I can't let my child know that the lights may be turned off or I'm not, astute with money or whatever. But if anything, that kind of conversation will strengthen the bonds with parents. I see that families are businesses with revenues and expenses. And the more children and parents talk about and develop a savings plan together, the closer the family will be, particularly when life happens, when you have to make those decisions in life.
So thank you. So Dr. Brutus, I want to get into the cultural lexicons if I can. And the minute we try to put an insurance policy on Meemaw, she's going to be really upset with us. How do we reverse that so that we can actually parlay into this generational wealth accumulation that life insurance provides?
I don't necessarily have the specific answer to that, but what I will say is, have we created the kind of conditions, the structures of policies to make it attractive for Black people to feel comfortable pursuing life insurance policies? Is there a framework that we provided? Are the rates at which Black people feel comfortable? Do they feel like they're going to be treated fairly? Do they have access and the information they need? Is there a history of Black people feeling like they've gotten all that they've their worth in this particular regard, right? Is there a history of discrimination in this particular aspect? Those are the things that we need to consider, because one of the things that you're raising about the mentality is a level of skepticism. We can call this Black skepticism, right? Particularly around their various financial instruments. And that skepticism is rooted in a particular history around particular financial instruments or particular history. And I think I just want to point this out, to one of the comments in the chat. I agree, right? Financial literacy will not pay for college. That's why at the Institute we support tuition-free universities. We support a model similar to New Mexico's model, tuition-free at the very least here in New Jersey, to provide people with a much more sustainable way of paying for university. But I always want to have your audience think about that question. The mentality and the approach, what is the backdrop for that? What is the context? What is the history for that skepticism in that particular area? Why is that happening on a larger scale?
Yeah, and we have tons of reasons for that. But, the striking thing is people carry insurance on their cell phones and they won't carry insurance on their lives. Let me say that again. People carry insurance on their cell phones and they won't carry insurance on their lives. And the crazy thing about it is, in some cases, the amount of money they pay per year for cell phone insurance could be going to a life insurance policy for them. So I hate to see the GoFundMes. I know historically, we always pass the hat, whether we're in church, and somebody mentioned to me that GoFundMe is just a virtual passing of the hat. But it suggests that, there's a lack of preparation and planning. So I want to move if I can, and I'm really following the chat. There are a lot of folks who want to know resources on life insurance. And I know the argument is out there versus term versus whole life, but you got to evaluate and do what's best for you. But I want to talk about entrepreneurship. This film was great for me because Donahue Peoples is one of my mentors. Once again, I read a lot of business biographies, and whether they know it sometimes or not, I take people on as mentors. And I did have a chance to meet Donahue Peoples. And after I read the Peoples Principles, how he started his business in DC with Marion Barry, and the office of the mayor contracting to be an anchor tenant in one of his buildings. But I also read about how he did the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami as a developer and as a construction manager. That was key and important to me in my research. And I had a chance to meet him at a conference. And that's another thing. We have to get out more and seek this knowledge, right? It's okay if you don't have it, but if you know where to go get it, surround yourself with people who are doing those things and talking about those issues. And I had a chance to talk to him, and mentality again. He told me that while he was developing all over the country, he was interested in coming to the New York and New Jersey market because he wanted to do some small projects. And when he said small projects, he meant $80 to $90 million. And just to set the bar in his mind, in his world, in his view, $80 to $90 million projects were small. So it's all about mentality. So I understand entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It is a tremendous grind. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and you are on all the time. Every opportunity is an opportunity. You kind of never cease with that, and everyone can't do that, and everyone is not called to that. Of the 27 million businesses that the United States Small Business Administration counts, only less than 8% of those businesses make more than $1 million. So a lot of folks talking about entrepreneurship sometimes just create jobs for themselves. There's a great book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, where it talks about if you don't parlay into a system that you can operate and is scalable, then all you've done is created a job for yourself. If you bake great pies and people say you should go into business, if you don't know how to run marketing and operations and sales and ordering, then all you have to do is make the pies every day and you just created a job for yourself for the rest of your life. That's not it. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship as a path. Donahue Peoples' path was in real estate. And I'm sorry, Monica's not with us now because she had some great information on real estate as a starter. But Sabrina, when you're teaching, another one of my favorite books was How to Buy and Sell Apartment Buildings. You can't know everything. All you have to do is talk to some folks that maybe know a little bit more than you. Marvette Brito, who runs a PR firm as an entrepreneur in New York City, said, if you're the smartest person in your group, you have to get a new group. So talk to us about, how we can learn what we don't know in the context of financial literacy as it relates to entrepreneurship and how we get started?
Well, Monica Soyome, I am very proud of her. She's a graduate of World of Money. She's 27 years old now. She attended World of Money ever since she was 10 years old. So financial education is almost like a foreign language. And so as her mother and her father agreed, sent her, made sure she attended every single year. Early in her life, she was determined to be an opera singer, to sing and to entertain around the world. But when she attended the World of Money and she saw the promised land, she said, I can do what and when, and this is what I have to do. And so now Monica, at 26 years old, she owns 2 multifamily buildings.
Beautiful.
Okay, and working on a third. She's also a realtor, a real estate investor, and she's just returning from Israel as singing abroad. So she took her money, the monies that she earned performing, and didn't run out to the store and spend everything on liabilities.
No Gucci belts. She didn't buy 12 Gucci belts.
That's right, and she didn't buy liabilities either. She bought assets, and so she's a millionaire now at a very young age. And so what we encourage with children and their parents is to start young, to attend organizations like World of Money, our Youth Financial Education Training Institute. It's an immersion, it's generational catch up, and there's no shortcuts to learning any language, including money. I'm putting resources in the chat and also there's an organization called NACA. I have zero relationship with them, but they're a nonprofit. They provide housing counseling, and with no down payment, no closing costs. They assign a housing counselor to you to get you prepared to purchase your own home or multifamily building or whatever it is. NACA, NACA.com. In fact, they're having an in-person event in June, at the end of this month in Jamaica, Queens. Everyone is welcome. And so if you are intentional about this generational wealth, you need to acquire some assets. And that includes real estate. NACA, I believe, is one of the best mortgage products in America. And they're not going to, Mr. Brutus, Dr. Brutus, he made reference to the 2008 crash, the housing crash, economic crash in this country. A lot of it came from these institutions giving individuals who could not afford these mortgages, didn't care because they were just going to get the property back. NACA will prepare you to get a mortgage. They will not rush you, make sure that if you can demonstrate you paid rent or what have you for 12 months, then they will prepare you to own your own real estate. NACA.com, NACA.com.
That's excellent. Dr. Brutus, I want to point to your research because your organization, I'm very familiar with the research you do. In this path to even entrepreneurship, you know, it's funny because when you go to all the conferences, they say you might not be able to qualify for a loan. So typically you got to start with friends and family. And we don't always have access to friends and family who are going to loan us $20,000. What does your research show in terms of how difficult it is to get started and how folks are getting started on their entrepreneurial dreams?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we're focused on in the Institute is trying to part of that is the lack of generational wealth and being able to go to your small network to start off with is we are proposing a baby bonds bill. Now that's going to be years down the line in which it comes into effect for people to come to, to realize that money. But when people will turn 18, that money will appreciate and they can use it to, if they want to spend it on college or if they want to start a small business, they can use that as seed money to start off their business, right? And I think there's a lot of data showing, that Black entrepreneurs, Black individuals beginning in the startup industry don't have the access to networks or mentors that would allow them to grow their business at scale in a way, or had to be in front of VCs or venture capitalists or things like that in a way that will allow them to grow their companies at scale in a way that white-owned companies or white startups are. We haven't had a specific report on this issue, but we do recognize that empowering people through baby bonds gives them the kind of autonomy when they turn 18 to pursue their dreams, be it to have a startup or to go to university and still build their own business, or to try to address that kind of gap where a lot of businesses, particularly started by white families, they can go to their networks and say, hey, can I borrow some money? Even the most prominent businesses like Jeff Bezos and Amazon went to his parents and got a $300,000 loan in his garage to start the biggest company in the world, right? So I think we recognize that there is this gap there that needs to be addressed in a particular way.
Now, even as you say that, you made me think of a point. Once again, going back to the film, the first two stories were entrepreneurs, Donald Peebles and her name is Suki, I believe, who has the I want to say cosmetics, but it's more than cosmetics. It's kind of a wellness company. She had a Black investor, husband and wife, that invested $250,000 in their business, and they are wildly successful. And they just made the Inc. 5000. If you read trade magazines like Entrepreneur Magazine and Inc. Magazine, they're owned by the same publisher. Inc. Magazine, they rank the fastest growing companies, the 5,000 fastest growing companies. And I think her company was like number 1,458, which is an accomplishment because she could count the number of Black firms and Black women-owned firms who are even in that 5,000. So we do have access to some of this money, but the whole thing around entrepreneurship, it is a total lifestyle. Another book recommendation, and I love to read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I don't exactly line up with his politics these days, but 20 years ago, it kind of set me on fire in terms of learning about assets and liabilities and good debt and bad debt and saving and investment. And I still challenge people sometimes around when they say they want to do something, and they look at it as an expense. And I say, well, it's depending on how you frame it. It may be an investment, not necessarily an expense. So we have to, and I don't know exactly how we do it. And I think this is part of the conversation to start, but we have to find a way to, so many things we talked about today, focus on what we have to do. And I think a big step is mentality, understanding and deciding that you are missing or lacking this information and you need to find it. And channeling the proper resources to get there. But the outside of us is the largest system that is kind of acting on us with the systemic stuff that you pointed out, Dr. Brutus. So I want to see if we can wrap a little bit and start talking about some action items, right? Because even if it's entrepreneurship, financial literacy, or generational wealth accumulation, there's some stuff that we can do right now. There's some things that we can do. So let me start off with you this time, Dr. Brutus, on what would you see as actionable items to walk away from this thing and get started tomorrow on?
Well, we at the Institute, as I mentioned before, we believe that the racial wealth gap was created by policies, and we can close the racial wealth gap and create a more equitable New Jersey through policies as well. And so we're pushing a number of policies like tuition-free college in New Jersey, like a first-generation home buyers program, like a fair appraisal housing law. So even when Black people buy homes, right, in the United States and in New Jersey, their homes are appraised at a lower value than white homes, right? And so you're losing value on your home, even though it could be worth more than a white home. So we want to end that discrimination. And so we've been promoting that bill. That bill is going through the legislature, thankfully. And we also want to expand, part of building wealth also, for some people earning an income, right? We want to improve the quality of jobs, more pay, better benefits, so that people can have a sustained kind of job that will allow them to build a kind of income to have that kind of life. So we're promoting that as well through our advocacy, and also financial literacy, as I mentioned, the baby bonds program. And also, I want to reiterate this tuition-free college, right? Tuition-free college, because having student debt and canceling student debt is important, because that delays important milestones like buying a home. And then once you're able to buy that home, we want to make sure it's appraised at a proper value, all right? And then we also want to make sure that you have a job that pays well, all right? So you can continue to pay that mortgage as well.
Absolutely. Sabrina, actionable items. I want you to be able to provide us with a couple of things that we can start tomorrow, even if it's in the planning stage. As you get all this information, as you gain all this knowledge, where do you go with it? What would you say is our next steps?
Well, the first step is to take a self-inventory. and accept the reality is that your life is worth saving. You deserve to have options and access so that you can make decisions for your own life outside of any external entity. That's the first thing. And then determine what are your goals. If everyone, let's say the majority of our attendees, our audience members tonight, have a relationship with a credit union or a financial institution, a bank, you need to make an appointment with the manager of that branch right away. Because just because your money is sitting in that account to benefit other people. So your meeting needs to go like this. My money, I have account of X amount with your bank. I need to know from you, what products do you have that's going to grow my money beyond the interest rate that my savings account is paying me? And then do research to see what other banks in your neighborhood or your city pay the highest interest rate for your account. So sometimes we have a passive relationship with our financial institution. We just open the account and then leave, as opposed to opening the account and staying and making sure that that institution is really serving you. The next one is to eradicate or minimize any debt. And let's go back to the needs and wants. And sometimes we think of it as, we think of needs and wants. We understand what needs and wants is, Sabrina. Well, really do we? I mean, I love the fact that I don't spend money on, particularly, I'm never at these Black Fridays, which I don't think Black Friday is for Black people. I just don't. I think that we need to stay away from this consumer approach to holidays, and that we take every opportunity to stock money away, to put money away. And then it's not lastly, but it's one of the other, determine that you're going to own property, that you're going to own your own home. That's why I like that organization, NACA, because maybe you need assistance with rental assistance. They provide that as well. You may say, well, what's the catch, Sabrina? Well, it's $25 a year that members have to pay.
Investment. It's an investment.
It's an investment. That's right. So there's all of these steps. I see some of the questions in the chat. So what if we do it? What if they don't teach it? It's by law in New Jersey, financial education is supposed to be taught.
I think it's 9 credits. I think the high schoolers have to have at least 9 credits to graduate.
But there's a law in the books that donkeys can't cross the road going to the left side.
Yeah,
but it's not enforced. And the teachers are saying, I don't understand this, and I have other obligations that I must achieve. That's why, worldofmoney.org is so important, whether it's World of Money virtual or World of Money in person. We're not going to get to this information in an immersive way unless we sit down and learn. And I'm putting some information in the chat regarding, someone asked about free colleges. There's employers that will take care of your tuition, and then understand why you want to go to college. If that's what, does it have to be a college, or can it be an apprentice or a 2-year program? But there's a lot of resources out there. So those are my 12 steps. You asked for 2.
No, that was great. And I like you touched on a couple of points. The commercialization of the holidays. One of the reasons I love Kwanzaa is because the focus, we don't have little kids anymore, but the focus is on making gifts each day. And we really, really promoted that. I'm never going to get trampled for television, ever. And so I'm good with that. And I wish more people were. But I want to just create a couple of action steps, and then I'm going to go to the formal Q&A, because we have some folks who actually asked some questions, and I want them to get a live answer before we leave. But in terms of action, really quick, my book, Making Bold Moves, Creating Multimillion-Dollar Success in 500 Days or Less, was really about how I left a position at North Public Schools. I was director of design and construction, and I started my business. And in 18 months, we went from $0 to $2.2 million. And the only reason I learned that was significant is because 8% of US small businesses make less than $1 million annually. But what I did in the book is I published what I call the Appendix 54. And those are my favorite 54 business books that I read. And my action step is read, 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 read. On average, I read 3 books a month. That's how I got to 54, 18 months times 3, 54. The statistics say 70% of Americans have read between 1 and 4 books last year. So if you're reading 3 books a month, imagine the edge you can create and the differentiation you can create as an entrepreneur. We all need a unique selling position. So imagine that, but also imagine what you can learn to replace what you don't know. Remember, you don't have to walk someone's shoes. You can learn from their story. So my action step is read, 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 read. And I want to just really quick flip to a couple of questions and see if we can get some live answers on the screen. Donna Stewart had a question, said, how and when do we begin to teach about these important issues, student debt, financial literacy? And I know you touched on it, Sabrina, but real quick answer, because we're going to do a round robin and go through a couple. How early is too early?
Birth. And World of Money, we started at age 7.
Yeah.
And children are really leaned into a conversation about money. Absolutely.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had a Young Entrepreneurs Academy and my daughter was 4 years old because she didn't have anywhere to go anyway. So she had to sit there. So she was learning at 4 years old. Dr. Brutus, how and when, how early is too early? What do you think?
I think once people can comprehend, once children comprehend, subtraction, addition, and basic math, these things are sequential, right? Just like any other form of information, it could be taught at the age is appropriate for them, right? So it's once someone can understand even basic concepts, I think there's no reason why it can't be taught at that level and to meet them where they are intellectually.
Absolutely. I have a question from an anonymous attendee. Do you believe that many children are being indoctrinated into an anti-college mindset, one which asserts that college only trains youth to become servants of the upper class? And I want to start this off if I can. It's all about what you do at home. You have to expose your children. The entire time I went to school and I graduated from Clifford Scott in East Orange in 1985, no one ever said anything about entrepreneurship. All I was told was do well in school so you can get a good job. And that is a disservice. Do well in school so you can get a good job. It wasn't until I got to college that I learned that I could create my own venture. I create my own business, my own industry, and sustain myself and my family. So our kids being indoctrinated to a anti-college mindset, what do you think? Sabrina, what do you think?
I can understand how she may see that. I'm saying go to a university that can teach you how to make decisions for yourself, and you can leverage that degree to achieve financial security and a generational wealth. Otherwise, it's just, you can still, take care of the upper middle class with a degree that is not useful in a global economy.
Yeah, not more than one person shares this anti-college sentiment. Rue Parker said the same thing. Dr. Brutus, what would you add?
I can't speak to people are being indoctrinated to think that way, but part of the purpose of college is to learn critical thinking skills, right? And that will serve you in any area of life. If you're entrepreneurship down to any other profession that one chooses, critical thinking skills is part of the purpose of a college degree. So this idea that somehow you're there as to serve, or I can't speak to that. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything like that. But the ideal purpose of college is to give you the skill set, critical thinking, so that you can do whatever it is. So you have that kind of skill set that underlies any potential avenue that you wish to choose to do.
Absolutely. Another question came up as if parents don't understand financial literacy, how can we or they teach what they don't know, right? One of the things I've heard is in terms of saving for college, some parents say, well, why should I start at 529 when I don't even know if my kid is going to go to college, because there's so many other options, even the ones that we talked about. But what I can tell you, what I've learned is even if your kid doesn't go to college, you can use the 529 money that you set aside for them for certain approved schools that you can use for yourself. You can go to golf school. I learned this because I play golf and I need to get better. Unfortunately, my kids, not unfortunately, but they used all the money. But if they left any money on the table, I could go to approved cooking schools. I could go to approved golf schools. I could go to several schools. So it's really about education and knowledge once again. So, for folks who don't know what they don't know, how do they put their finger on and get started?
Well, what you can do, I'm I feel like sometimes when we talk about financial education, it's like we're trying to say that you should learn trigonometry tonight. That's not what we're saying. We're saying at least save, tithe, pay yourself first, minimize your debt, accumulating more assets than liabilities. Those are any items that increase in value over time. And there's very few, there's like 5 of those things on this planet since the beginning of time. That's saving, that's investing, whether that's mutual funds or savings or whatever, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, all of those we need to do as opposed to focusing on liabilities. And that if you could just do that basic, then you are financial educated. The individuals that I mentioned earlier, Osceola McCarthy, she had amassed about $150,000 upon her death, and she washed clothes for other people, but she saved her money, and she had maybe a 3rd grade education to the University of Mississippi. So she didn't go to a school or whatever, but she said, I'm gonna save my money because I want a child who didn't receive education like I did to be able to.
And,
so,
and Madam Charles Johnson Walker also washed clothes before she came upon the beauty products.
That's right. And I want to make sure I say this now because I may forget, because I see in the chat, about trust funds and then insurance. And I did post someone in there, but everyone has a unique circumstance. There's 137 individuals here right now. Each of you have your own. So you need to meet with a license. Can I say that again? Licensed financial advisor that you've done the background check with, not just one, and it's not a company, maybe that person, to hear what your needs are to make sure that they're fulfilled. But I believe that everyone should have one, but you need to do your research on who's the best for you, and not listen to anyone on the internet.
And I want to add, you need to interview them. So often, you said it earlier, Sabrina, we put the money in the bank and then we leave. You need to understand that you got to participate here, and this is two-way. All of these things are two-way. When you go out to get a financial planner, and don't just get someone who sells products for a particular organization, but interview them. Make certain that they fit your needs, make certain that you like their style, because it's all about preference and how people approach things. So don't be afraid to put them on an interview schedule and see who you like and what you can learn. The whole time you're interviewing them, you are learning in the process.
Right. And the Posse Foundation, I put that in the chat. World of Money is a nominating organization for Posse, provides 4-year merit-based college scholarships to top universities. We just were looking for students in New York, Atlanta, Chicago, and District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. Maybe we receive 5 essays.
So we want to publicize that. And I'm hoping Katie can help us get that information out to everyone.
4-year merit-based college scholarship, 4 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 people apply.
Yeah, so it's about uncovering information. Dr. Brutus, a lot of questions point to where can we go for this information? Can somebody walk into the Institute of Social Justice and come upon all these facts and these research? Or do you do white papers? How do we access that think tank of information so that we can put it to our use?
Sure. So specifically to the Institute, if you want to find out all of our papers, all our research are njisj.org. You can find out, and it's broken down by economic justice, democracy and justice, criminal justice, economic justice. You can find reports about home ownership, bridging the racial wealth gap, student loan debt, right? You can find executive summaries. You can find full reports there, right? Speaking of paying for college, New Jersey recently just passed legislation in the past 2 years. One, the Community College Opportunity Grant that pays for 2 years of college for individuals who come from families with household incomes of $65,000 or less. And then also the Garden State Guarantee that pays for first 2 years of 4-year school in a public institution in New Jersey for households family income is $65,000 or less, right? But the Institute, we want to push New Jersey to go in farther, to go to what New Mexico has done, the New Mexico model, which is to pay for free tuition for all their students, regardless of income, for any 4-year institution, public institution in the state of New Mexico.
Excellent.
We really want to push New Jersey in that direction. Also, I have to, point this out. As part of the California Reparations Task Force Commission, one of their proposals is a GI level state bill that would provide Black students with tuition-free college anywhere in the country, right? Here in New Jersey, we're also pushing for Reparations Task Force. We're having a rally in Newark on June 17th, starting at noon. Part of the Reparations Task Force bill, maybe one of those policies would be that proposal. And we really want to close the racial wealth gap with having a commission to study the history of slavery, study the racial wealth gap here in New Jersey. If you want to find out more about our campaign, go to njisj.org/slay the word, and we'll be having a rally in Newark on Friday at noon.
Excellent. We have to push for more enforcement of that Amistad legislation as well, because I like to say legislation is the key, but until you get the enforcement, it's not really doing anything. I'm going to end with one more thought question and a comment. Adila Kudas has some questions about children owning their own life insurance policies. If a child has a trust fund, I don't know if they have access to take money out before 18, but can it hurt them? But can you speak to, we want to use these vehicles that we learn can help us. But, if I start a trust fund or a 100-year trust for my children's children, when it's time to go and get a Pell Grant, are they going to be disqualified because of something else? What can we say about that? And then I'm going to end it with a comment from Eric Friedman in terms of what can white folks do other than advocacy. And I have some questions too, because these challenges should not be challenges that the Black community faces alone. I appreciate that comment, Eric, and I'm going to address that too after we talk about not allowing these vehicles to harm us when it's time for subsidy.
Yeah, I think that regarding the trust fund, that it depends on the trust fund. You got to read the fine print. Some they do have you're penalized for withdrawing money if the child becomes 18. Got to sit down with a licensed insurance advisor, financial planner to outline what your needs are and if there are any penalties. And then Cheryl Davenport mentioned parents own property. Should property be inherited? I think that's what we're talking about tonight, right? In terms of generational wealth, giving something to your descendants to be able to inherit. I say yay.
Yeah, Dr. Brutus?
I will, Sabrina answered it. that answer is wonderful.
So once again, whether your child takes the life insurance or not, I believe you should have a policy on them. I started policies on my kids. They're 24 and 21 respectively, $15 a month. Once again, your cell phone insurance is probably more than $15. And in terms of generational wealth accumulation, when they are ready to buy a house, I can use that policy and borrow $25,000 against it and help them with their deposit. That's generational wealth accumulation. We have to use the tools, people, that exist already. So going back to Eric Friedman's comment about what can folks outside of this community do, I think we need to amplify the voices. So advocacy is always going to be at the top. But in terms of take action, hire, right? When you're in a hiring position, hire folks that bring diversity. I heard President Obama speak to say that this whole notion of diversity is to make up for the blind spots that we have naturally, right? You just don't see something the same way someone else does if you don't come from a particular perspective, community, region, or industry. So to accommodate the blind spots that are built in, we need to use these diversity lenses. So I would ask folks outside of the community, when they are in position to structure agreements, to structure loans, to structure employment opportunities, to structure educational assistance, to structure guidance counseling. Guidance counselors in these schools are very, very important, but they need to be educated also. So there are quite a few things that we all can do inside and outside the community. And I think we'll be getting down the road to where we need to go. I think we can talk about this for another hour, but I don't think our sponsors set that up for the program. And this has been a fantastic discussion. The chat has been great. You folks are really into it with your questions and your comments are on point. Our panelists, can we clap and give it up for our panelists? Dr. Jean-Pierre Brutus, I know you guys are on the webinar, so I probably can't hear you clap. And Sabrina Lamb from World of Money. Really, really excited about this opportunity to share and this platform by NJPAC. I hope you all come back. I hope you all continue to inquire, and I hope you all look for these resources that we're going to list. And Katie, if you're out there listening, I'm sure we have a way to send some information out to all of our registrants about these scholarship opportunities, these financial opportunities, the work that the Institute for Social Justice is doing, as well as the book that was in the chat, The Peebles Principles by Donahue Peebles, and Making Bold Moves, Creating Multi-Million-Dollar Success in 500 Days by yours truly, William S. Parrish Jr. I have enjoyed myself with you all tonight. I don't know if you could tell, I kind of like this stuff. I get excited about it. I'm very passionate, and entrepreneurs need passion. So Latoya, are you still out there? Did you have fun, Latoya? Did we have fun?
I am here, and I was literally sitting here taking notes in my notebook. I mean, pen to paper, taking notes every single step of the way. I think, again, this was amazing. This was informative, and this was right on time and what we need. This was educational, and you know, these videos will live forever on the NJPAC website. So anyone who needs to come back, if you missed a step because you were writing something down, as I was, and you accidentally missed a poignant point that someone had made this evening, you can always go back and watch it. But this was amazing, and you all did a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, so I just want to thank the panelists, and I also want to thank our audience this evening. We so appreciated your interest in supporting our communities. And tonight we learned very specific action steps that we all can take. And also for those who need to be allies, you have specific action steps as well. Our Standing in Solidarity Social Justice series will provide a playlist of all of our panels for you to enjoy throughout the summer, because this is unfortunately our last one for the season. And we will resume our panel discussions in September. Hopefully you were able to watch from September to June. If you are a fan of these, if you have registered for all of them, you know that we have talked about everything from racism to colorism to police brutality, Asian allyship, and more. So if you are interested in those topics, please make sure you go to njpac.org and make sure you look up the Standing in Solidarity series. And please just go back and watch all of them. I've been there for the majority of them, and they are extremely important and extremely educational. Again, we will resume our panel discussions in September with our Racial Healing Circle that's going to be facilitated by Ms. Sharon Stroy of Rutgers University, Newark. If you have never been part of a Racial Healing Circle, it is a phenomenal experience, and I suggest that you all make sure you register in August so that you can be a part of that in September. Again, thank you to everyone who had comments in our chat section, and to everyone who is a part of the Q&A. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for lending your time and expertise to educate us all.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys in September.
Bye.
Thank you.